I've always been a huge advocate of the idea that mental health is health. It's the same thing as physical health. You know, they go hand in hand. You can't separate them.
Mental health is actually a state of psychological, emotional, and social well-being that allows us to be resilient, cope with the stresses of life.
I would describe the current state of mental health to be moving in the right direction. I would use the word progress, I think. I mean, even just the fact that we're having this conversation is actively working to rid the stigma around mental health. And I think for years we just keep talking about, like, we have to normalize it, and this is the way to do that.
I think mental health in our society currently is something, thankfully, that is being talked about more.
We have recognized it more recently, and so with recognizing it more, we have found that more people's mental health is not as great as it should be.
I remember a couple years ago when Tom Custer came into my office and told me, he said, "Do you realize 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 people have issues with mental health?" And I was astounded. I knew it was a high figure. I had no idea it was that high. But for me, it brings a high level of awareness and I think a responsibility to what we do.
Mental health is not something that zeroes into one small population of our society. There can be many individuals that suffer from mental health, and it doesn't matter their age, their race, their gender.
As student athletes, there's a lot of pressure just as in American society, but even more, you know, with school, with your sport, and it just gets overwhelming. It's a lot to take in sometimes. And also we don't have a lot of free time as athletes, so it's important for us to take time to ourselves, I think, and just debrief with a busy lifestyle.
I think that student athletes today have a lot of pressure. Time demands, they've got school, they've got academic support, they have meetings, they have practice, they have competition, they have treatment, they've got training, and at the end of the day, a lot of times there's no me time for student athletes.
A lot of things just go unnoticed, like our schedules, the pressures from playing games, the pressures to perform well in the classroom and on the field or the court, etc., wherever you play on. Then you also have to take into account you are human, you are a student, you are a college student.
I think they're vulnerable to have negative mental health because we ask more of them. I'm not saying they're better than the normal student or they have to do more, but I think the expectations are placed upon them. There's just an extra facet of it.
The sense of being perfect, I think that's what a lot of student athletes run into, you know, being perfect in school, being perfect in your sport, when it's not realistic, but you're putting those expectations on yourself.
I think that student athletes nationwide right now have such a narrow window of free time, an unscripted part of their day, that they're challenged. And I think as administrators and coaches, we have to be cognizant of that.
I think that whether it's real or perceived, these expectations, it just seems like there are higher expectations, whether that's how you appear on social media, whether it's how you look to your friends, how you look to your family, pressure to perform, pressure to just be something. And I feel like some of that's exacerbated by social media.
Again, what they don't see in social media is the work that goes into it. They don't see the aftermath that comes from it. All they see is this snippet of this idea of that's what I want, that's perfection, that's the end goal. And because they're not seeing the work that goes into it, because they're not seeing the magic behind the lens to make that all to be marketable, they lose track of all of the hard work. They lose track of the ups and the downs.
I actually saw a tweet from a softball player, I think it was one of the Oklahoma softball players, where someone had tweeted about them or one of the athletes, and she responded and said, "This is why we all have problems or we all feel so much pressure, is because there are these people hiding behind their screens thinking they know something about someone, and it's really just this highlight reel."
I think it's really important for student athletes to know that they are a student and they are an athlete and they are a person. And those 3 areas of their lives are really important. And success or achievement in one of those areas does not have to come at the expense of another area.
A lot of our student athletes have their identities so wrapped up into what they do on the field. Are they getting playing time? What's the relationships like with their coaches? What are the relationships like with the other athletes? And then you add on top of that is how are they doing in school? And a lot of times that's as far as people get.
I think a lot of the times when people feel, not great about themselves or like they're not achieving the goals that they want, that comes from within, and it's really hard to convince them otherwise.
I feel like just being more open and being able to talk about it and tell them like you're not alone if you're going through something, and checking in on athletes is huge, or just even people. If you just have one random phone call or a text message like, hey, I just want to see how you're doing, it helps a lot.
I think that lots of people have different love languages, so whether that's giving them a hug or writing them a note or just giving them words of affirmation, quality time, different things really matter to people.
I think, once again, treating people with trust and respect, making sure that they have their own time to be with their family, time to be by themselves, time to do something they love to do. And when we're in the office, we're working, and when we got our work done, we're gone.
Just coming from the perspective as a psychologist, I think one of the most effective things one of the things that I try to do is just allow people to be who they are, to kind of accept them, to not judge them, to let them know that no matter who they are or how they are, that's enough, it's okay.
Oh yeah, I try to give everyone on the team a role. I do remember having a walk-on a few years ago, and I just point blank asked her, she's like, Coach, I'm not the fastest one on the team. I said, yeah, but you have a role on this team, and it's up to you to figure out what that role is. And if that role is being a leader on the team, then be the best leader you can be. If that role is to be a supporter on the team, then be the best supporter. If that role is to be the fastest athlete on the team, then be the fastest athlete.
You don't have to have the answers to be a support for that person, whether it's that person individually or whether it's a friend or a family member. I think the main thing is you don't have to know everything, because I don't think people who are looking for help are looking for the one fix-it-all. I think they're just looking to be heard, and maybe that first step of just talking about it is the hardest step. So I think, once again, just being available and being a listener, and don't think that they have to be perfect. Just listen and then be supportive.
I feel like just communication is the best thing. I feel like just making a comfortable space for everyone to speak out, and acknowledging that it does take a lot of strength for someone to speak out, and it's not a sign of weakness.
And I think the biggest thing to understand is you're not betraying that person by looking to get the help for them. I think that's the hardest part, is we never want to upset them more than they are in that fragile state, and understanding that when they are able to come out of that, they will actually be thankful that you have interceded.
Maybe you have to hold their hand to like a Duke's Let's Talk, or like go with them so they're not going by themselves. I know that's one of the scariest things, is to go by yourself to something that's brand new to you.
I do think our goals should constantly be getting bigger and bigger. Like, we shouldn't be settling where we are. We shouldn't get to the next step and be like, oh, we made it. I think this is going to be a progressively moving goal. It should always be striving to become more and more normalized.
We're always committed to doing things as leaders within an industry and a community, and we plan to lead through this. We want to do all the things we can possibly do from a human resource level, from a relationship level, to make sure that we're taking care of the young people in our program.